Is medical cannabis in line with sustainable investment? That's one of the things I'm going to ask Derek Simmross, the CEO of ODI Pharma, that's on its way to Spotlight Stock Market. Welcome, Derek.
Thank you.
How is it to be in business with a product that some people associate with narcotics?
Well, it has evolved over the last few years. I think in early 2016-17, it was not an easy issue to talk about because I think that the knowledge among the society was not where it is today, where people understand the benefits. And so I think that it'll continue to get better as time progresses, that people learn more and more and more that it is actually a medical treatment, and it loses some of the stigma as a social drug.
Yeah. Why should doctors prescribe medical cannabis?
Well, I think that the most compelling argument is to compare it versus the alternative medicines, the opioids. Opioids are very harmful, very addictive, and cause many problems, as people have seen in the media with the war on the opioid products. But as far as medical cannabis as a product, I think that it's less addictive, less harmful. It's a natural medicine, and there's proof that patients are satisfied with using it to help their ailments or symptoms to ailments.
So what is your company's business model?
Our business model, I think that we would like to break up the industry into two different sectors. There's cultivation, which requires heavy investment. It takes a lot of time. And then there's implementation. And implementation is what we focus on. It's basically taking a raw material from a cultivator, and we bring the raw material to a country, and we take total responsibility for the product from when it comes into the country as raw material till after the patient consumes it, and any of the regulatory processes along the way, which it's quite a complicated process, and it takes time to set up the proper infrastructure, and that's what we've been doing for the last 2 to 3 years.
Yeah. What administrative method for the patient to take in the medicine are you going to focus on in the beginning? Well,
we are starting with cannabis flower, which is intake through a vaporizer is the ideal means of intake. But obviously the business as we see it moving forward will go to more higher order preparations where the oils, strips on the tongue, or different means of taking in the product, and they all have a different type of effect on the market, basically on the human body. Vaporizers will be very quick. Oils tend to have a longer lasting, less extreme result.
Yeah, I see.
Yeah.
You focus on Poland now in the beginning.
Yes.
Why is that?
Well, I think that as we've given a lot of presentations recently, I think that the main topic and one thing that's important to understand is that in every country, legalization is happening at a different rate and a different process. In Poland, the laws that are made or in place allow for medical cannabis to be prescribed for a variety of ailments. It can be used for MS, epilepsy, cancer treatment, pain management, chronic pain. It has a very wide scope of how doctors can prescribe it. When if you look at some other countries, for example, Norway or the UK would be considered legal medical cannabis, but it's a medicine of last resort. It's the infrastructure of how to prescribe it is not as in the Polish market, where basically doctors have the right to choose of how to treat their patients.
You plan on the first shipments in the middle of next year.
Correct.
What are the main hurdles that you have to get past for this to become reality?
The main hurdles is that the marketing authorization, which is a process of documenting how the product is created from the supplier side, the process of importing, the process of going through a facility, the process of what the distribution means is going to be how the product will be stored. You basically have to identify the product to the Polish government, exactly what the substance is, how it's handled, every step of the way. So there is no lack of clarity and there's no problems with the product, and that you know how to deal with any problems that do arise. And that's standard in every country in Europe, that the medicines have to be taken responsible for, and that's what we're in that process. And the average time is between 4 and 7 months, as we have the strongest partner in the country, and we have the third biggest producer in the world. All the information is readily available.
Is there a global shortage for medical cannabis, given the increased demand and more countries legalizing and so on?
Yeah, I think it's important to understand how or where the product can come from in the world. Up until a few years ago, basically, there were 4 main producers in the world. There was Canada, and then there was Israel, and the United States, which cannot export, and Uruguay was on the list as well as the countries that were able to export the product. Israel stopped politically the ability to export until recently. It's coming back online, so left only Canada to supply the entire world for medical cannabis. As can be seen, it's changed over the last 2 to 3 years, where they're now allowing for production in Denmark, Portugal, Greece, Italy. It's going everywhere, Germany, but it's a long process. It takes a lot of investment, and there's no guarantee that your product will actually meet the standards required. So you're potentially investing a lot of money into a product that is many years away. And if you compare it to what's being created in Canada, where they've the most experience on it, they have enormous facilities. The production has gone from X to X times 30. So the production is coming online, but it does take time, so we see a shortage over the next couple of years. But eventually we think supply will outpace demand.
Why do you think a supplier should choose you as a partner in Europe, for example?
Well, the supply side is quite easy. It's we're building the infrastructure for them to sell the product, and so the demand for them to be able to grow the product at a certain cost and then sell their product it's pretty clear. We're providing them a infrastructure to profit. On the domestic side in Europe, the legal framework is very complicated, and it's taken us a lot of time to understand who to handle the product at what stage, how do we get the sign-off from the product, what are the test requirements. And we have put the infrastructure in place so we can handle it. And it's a very time-consuming, cumbersome process, and we basically are allowing producers, cultivators, to access the market without all the time spent on building it.
And if we look at your customers, then you don't sell directly to the patients?
No, we don't sell directly to the patients. Basically, the patient, it's a pharmaceutical product, so it's only via a doctor prescription. And so it goes to the pharmacies, but rather than go from pharmacy to try to sell directly to pharmacies, we're going through wholesale distribution. Some countries will have a large wholesale distributor, some countries will have small distributors based on the demand and the need and basically the cost structure for it. We're very focused on costs and keeping costs in line with what our goals are.
There was this Danish medical cannabis company that recently ran into trouble with their Canadian supplier because the supplier did not follow authorities' rules and so on. How do you make sure you're not going to get into similar trouble?
It was very unfortunate. In the industry, we're very focused on trying to help make people aware of the positive sides, and that was just an unfortunate part of the industry. I guess that it's impossible to protect yourself against bad behavior in any aspect of any business. But what we have done is that we traveled around for many years meeting all the producers. Our producer has the capacity to produce an enormous amount of cannabis, and they're the 3rd biggest producer in the world at the moment. So the supply side is not really an issue for us, and I think that that's what created the demand, that created the problems, is they couldn't meet the demands. We don't foresee that in our business partner. We've also been through and done a qualified visit of the site with an analyst and gone through every step of the process. So we're confident that our partner is living up to the responsibility that's necessary.
How much money has been invested in ODI Pharma so far, and how do you defend the valuation of the company of 150 million SEK in this share offer?
We have invested capitalized the company with a total of 8 million Swedish kronor approximately. It's taken a couple of years. We started the first company in early 2018 in February, and we built a structure of 3 companies now, and we're planning on having more in the near future. The goal of the company and how we're pricing ourselves and what we get our valuation, I think it's important to just look at the 3 main factors. It was published from the Polish health agencies that they think that there's 300,000 patients in Poland today that require medical cannabis. And that's sort of our baseline number, which equivalents like 0.7% of the society, which in Canada, it's on medical cannabis is much over 1% of society. And we see that as sort of the criteria. So we're very conservatively going out that we say it's not going to happen next year that there's 300,000 patients. We're saying it's going to take 5 years. So we're very conservative on the expectation for how many patients. On the Health Canada website, they announced that there's 1.6 grams per day per patient on using medical cannabis. For our assumption, we're using 0.6 grams per day. So we're taking a very, very serious, we lower the estimates by quite a dramatic amount. We are estimating that we have a 10% market share, as we'll be one of the first products on the market. There's only one product available currently on the market, and our distribution partner has a 30% market share. We think 10% is a very, very achievable, very conservative market share. Using those three criteria, after first year, we're trading at 5 times EBITDA, which is quite attractive, we think. And we're trading at year 2 at 1.5 times EBITDA. So the numbers speak for themselves and people can make their own decision, but we think it's fair.
Growing medical cannabis can be energy intense. Do investors that follow sustainability guidelines, can they invest in medical cannabis?
I believe that who is going to invest in sustainability and social responsibility, you have to package them together in one product. As it is electricity intensive to produce, we have chosen a partner that's using the greenhouse grow, which means they get a lot of benefit on the sunlight. And so there's a lot less electricity requirements for our producer than other producers that are growing in confined grow rooms. We also are focusing on using the most responsible packaging mechanism as well. When it comes to the social side of the social responsibility, we believe that the product is much safer than the alternative medicines as well. And that what we're presenting and promoting throughout Europe has an enormous social benefit versus the alternative medications. And so for us, I think as a whole package, I can't see why that it wouldn't be considered a sustainable investment strategy with the producer and with the products that we're working with. But that being said, I have to go and do some research as who's investing and why they're investing.
All right. Thank you, Derek, for being with us, and good luck.
Thank you so much.